Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well today. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about what I will be expecting for the media planning project. So this will be the consistent of your final project. If you need any additional information than what's provided, I am going to provide a couple of examples that will be beneficial in terms of former student work to kind of help you along in case you're not familiar with some of this stuff. The other thing will be on Media Flight Plan in Chapter 5, so that was this week's assigned reading. So make sure you look through that, and this is more or less what I'm going to be explaining over the next 20 minutes or so concerning your plans book. So again, this will be your final project for the remainder of this class. I will mention that it is due on the last day of class, which is December 6th. So we have a little over a month to be able to complete this project. And we're getting to a point in this class where you've got the materials that you need in order to be successful in completing this particular project. I will mention that the plans book in general, I'm just going to jump right into it, is a book assignment that will consist of the student individually crafting a media plan. So this is your opportunity to really take something based on what we've been covering over a Media Flight Plan, David Meerman Scott, and actually put it into a actual comprehensive book to show to a potential employer or even the client that you have chosen. So some of you have some local businesses that you would like to present to, and this will be your opportunity to demonstrate this book to them. So you'll notice that it will consist of an executive summary, SWOT analysis, research, marketing objectives, and media objectives. I will mention that the rubric of this is extremely loose, and that is intentional. The reason that it is loose is because every single one of you is doing a different method of your particular clients. So most of you all have different clients. There are one or two that are doing something similar, if not the same. However, you're going to probably approach the media mix quite significantly different to everybody else that might be doing a similar or completely the same project in this case. So overall expectations in terms of size of the campaign as well as costs of the media plan are going to differ. So I can't hamstring y'all and string this all together into saying that the rubric is going to be very tight in this case. And in advertising in general, we tend to keep it kind of loose in terms of the things that we want. However, this assignment sheet will provide the basic skeleton for what every book should look like, excuse me, to some extent. As aforementioned, this will be due on the 6th. This is a Wednesday. If you want to turn anything in earlier, you are more than welcome to, and I'll be happy to look at and critique anything that I see within this. You've done a relatively significant portion of the work so far, so I've mentioned that there is a method to my madness when it comes to this plans book. And the biggest thing is that you have probably done, at the very least, a third of the final project that it's due. Most of y'all have probably done somewhere around half of the work required to complete this plans book. So a lot of it you're just going to have to put together in terms of formatting and making sure everything looks good in that case. Length is going to be 15 to 20 pages. Do not be daunted by the length of this project. It's not your typical research paper. I'll show you an example. And even this was, the one I'm about to show you was extremely wordy for my liking. I actually, they did an extremely good job, but they just put way too much text on here. But this is listed from our last NSAC client, which was Taipei Frozen Food. So I'm just going to show you a brief media plan of what they did. So this was their title page, their table of contents, which will all be included in the overall page range. So You'll notice as you're going through the pages today on this video, you'll realize it doesn't really come up to about 20 pages on this. So include your cover page and your table of contents. But you'll have executive summaries. Again, the pages here do not exactly have a lot of text in them, even though they decided that it would be a good idea to put a lot of text here. But I do want to show you this to kind of get you in the mindset that it doesn't require a whole lot. It just needs to be comprehensive and understandable. So again, you'll see kind of what we're going through. And some of these you will not be responsible for. So I'm not going to make you do geographic locations and spot markets for this particular campaign. I will make you do a schedule, which, this came out a lot better than I thought it would, in terms of different strategies used here, as well as a budget. And again, now granted, this is also something to be considered. They had a 2-tier budget. So yours will look significantly different in this case. So this is kind of an example. And again, don't be daunted by the amount of pages. The text is typically relatively short. And again, I'm looking for images, infographics, spreadsheets, charts. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. And the other thing is that you've already got about a third to half of it completed. So if you're keeping up with the assignments, you should ideally have everything you need to complete the rest of this. And like I said, I'll kind of show you what that means as we're going along here. So it is 30% of the overall course grade, so it is significant. I don't want to sugarcoat that one bit. But again, you've already been working through these. I've already been evaluating some of the things and correcting some of the things so that when you actually get to this project, it should be in a relatively good state for what you would like to do with this. So I do want to go over the sections of the plans book because I do think this is going to be really important in terms of the description of what I'm looking for within this project. So first thing first, like I said, you do want to have a cover and a table of contents. That was not included in here, but I'll make sure to write that in real quick before I actually put it to As You Learn. But first and foremost, you want an executive summary and a goal, and that's actually, I'll change that real quick, and since I haven't posted, that's okay, 1 to 2 pages. And, oops. And this is going to be based on just some sentences of your campaign period, your research summary, so what were some of your findings, who's your target audience, what are some of your objectives, a summary of primary findings, a media summary, a budget, your public relations or corporate social responsibility, and evaluation. So this is an example of that. Of an executive summary. Like I said, 1 page, very concise, and it's just a preview. I'll give you another example here. So like I said, now they actually decided to work with Creative. You do not need to do that. This is the material you'll want to look at. It's not highlighting the way I want it to. Yeah. Actually, that worked out perfect. You will not need to worry about Creative here. This is what I want you to focus on within the executive summary. So, campaign period, you'll notice right here in terms of what I'm looking for, and I keep it consistent of the beginning of January 1st to December 31st of 2018. So, I believe that's listed on there. Yep. But something to keep in mind. So what I'm going to show you right here is stuff that you've already done. Okay, so you've already done an instance of a brand history. So this is just who your brand is, what they do, current status, prior advertising campaigns, public perception, And you can gain public perception. So if you don't have this already, you can gain that through just looking at newspaper articles and when I say newspaper articles, I mean like online articles. You can look at this through your findings within social media, Yelp reviews, Google reviews, kind of get that main feel of what the public perception is for that now. You also want to know your competitor history, which we've gone over, and you've done this in terms of your primary and secondary competitors. So putting this into the context of your brand, help you understand media share, which is another thing that we've talked about. So I will want to make sure that you have that. And again, this can be, I would like to have like logos and stuff just to make it look nice. But again, they just used text on this particular one. My other group here, I've got others, but these are two of the better ones that I wanted to show y'all. But they basically broke down social media analysis, that kind of thing. So again, pretty easy to go through. And you've already done some of this so far. What is your research? So you've done some secondary research in terms of doing mild thematic analysis of your brand, as well as any database searches that you've done in the past. Like I said, Google reviews are fine. Anything that you can get your hands on in terms of secondary research. So I'm not requiring you to do interviews. I'm not requiring you to do focus groups. All this is just the thematic analysis. But I do want you to take this seriously. But you already have most of this information already that you've compiled. And same with your target demographic and buyer personas. What age range would you like to work with in terms of who you want to advertise? Do you have a psychographic that you're particularly invested in? So makers, believers, achievers, strivers, that kind of thing. As well as the buyer personas. And again, I'll show you an example. Excuse me. And this was pretty straightforward. They didn't do a whole paragraph on theirs in particular. And you can see for target audience with this one in particular, like I said, they just wanted to talk about some of the statistics they found. And this can go into some of the research that was talked about. So again, those are your target audiences as well as your buyer personas to include. You'll also have your SWOT analysis, which you just did, self-explanatory, but you'll want to have that on a single page to talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that should be pretty easy to go through here. I do want a page based on public relations. So given the merge with PR and marketing and advertising as expressed by David Meerman Scott, I really would love a page dedicated to PR or cause-related advertising that you may have. The best way to do this is to determine what is a good match for a way to give back to a community. So if it's a local business, you might want to consider some ideas that your brand identifies with and how they might be able to provide back to the community in this case. If you've got a national brand, you can actually do some research in terms of things that they're already doing. You can do some research in terms of looking into, are those effective or not? Because if they're not, we need to think about maybe pairing with a non-government organization that matches with our brand really well. And when I say match, think of it in terms of if I'm Coca-Cola. One of the biggest issues is that we might have some issues with recycling bottles and plastic bottles. So we might do a recycling initiative to give back to the community to make sure that we have cost-effective as well as environmentally friendly methods to be able to use here. And so, again, that's what I'm referring to in terms of public relations. But just give me some ideas with what you might have for PR. And again, take your time with it and ask me questions if you're confused about that. So this is normally stuff that you've already done up to this point. I recognize that PR is stuff that you haven't done so far, but that's okay. It shouldn't take you that long to come up with a page description of what you would want to work with PR. The next page is going to be based in things that you haven't done yet. You will have a media mix, and this will be the majority of your particular campaign. Again, it doesn't need to be terribly long, but I might have you have a conversation about how you plan to use social media, web and mobile. What are your objectives with this? And so you see right here, with their particular media mix, they talked about the objective tactics and just did some mild description of traditional, non-traditional, promotional ideas. This is what I want. I do not want y'all wasting time on coming up with major creative executions. That's not what I'm looking for in this case. What I'm looking for are ideas. So just a basic description and where you plan to put these particular ideas for a media strategy. So that's your media mix. 2 to 4 pages is what I'm looking for. And you don't have to do all of them. So you have got the 4 breakdowns in terms of traditional, non-traditional, digital, and social, and mobile. You are not required to do all 4, but I would at least like you to do 2. So some of you have just mentioned that I just want them to do better on social media. That's fine. I do want you to make sure that you're doing something else with that so you can gain a little bit more in terms of your media mix as well as your budget breakdown. So that is one of the requirements I will have for. You can use all 4 if you'd like. If that's something that you'd like to do, that's fine as well. The next thing is your budget breakdown, which you'll have a proposal of what you were given in terms of, so let's say you have a small client, what did they give you or what did we agree upon as the budget? If you've got a large company and you don't know what their budget is, then that's where we settled on the $10 million to be able to work with. So please take that into consideration and break down the budget, and I'll show you what that looks like. So they talked about their objectives and tactics, which were pretty easy. Now remember, they did a 2-tier budget, so yours doesn't have to look like this per se, but I do want you to produce your costs and projected subtotal for how much you plan on. So this was, I believe, $10 million. But you see, everything they used within this particular schedule. This is a very nice version of it. Another one that was done in terms of 10 million just looked like this. It doesn't have to be fancy. I do want you to prove that you're utilizing the tools well. But again, it does not have to be so comprehensive that it looks like this. If you want it to, you can certainly do that as well. So that's budget breakdown. The other thing is your media schedule. And I'll show you what that looks like. So this is one of my favorites. So media schedule basically says, I'm going to take the media mix and the media vehicles that I plan to use for the campaign, and I'm going to put them in a spreadsheet and say, here is my cost, here are my impressions, and this is when it's going to take place during that calendar year. And you'll notice here that some of the particular media schedules that we're dealing with are all year round. Some will be due during certain time periods, some will be sporadic, so we see magazines, like for this one in particular, they said, it was released once every, or 4 times a year, so you see each time that was broken down. But again, some can be really complex, others can be pretty simple in terms of the way that you do it. So this is just an example of what you'll be looking for, and I'll post these examples up on as you learn. I will want you to produce your reach, frequency, and GURPS, which honestly will be a pretty simple page here. I'll show you what it looks like. So reach and frequency. I just want to know your overall for measured in terms of what you're reaching, your average frequency, your GURPS, and your gross impressions. This is a very large number for the campaign, but again, do the best you can. If you need help with some of this, I'll be more than happy to help you out a little bit. I've got a few media tools that unfortunately I'm not allowed to distribute, but I can help you out a little bit in terms of getting to that point of some of the impressions as well as GURPS that may be measured in some of those media outlets or media vehicles. So just something to think about. The last thing is evaluation in terms of what you plan to do here. And so in their case, they said, we're going to do a survey and we're going to do pre and post revenue amounts to maximize effort. And this was another example. And so that, again, they mentioned interviews. They manage their creative executions, that sort of thing. Just what you plan to do after the campaign. Is there anything you change? Would you keep it the same? And so forth. And then an appendix, just basically your works cited. And this will just depend on how much you put into the campaign. I'm going to show you one of theirs, and it's kind of daunting of how much work they put into theirs. So you can see they had a lot of citations here that they worked with. I'm not expecting this, and I'm not expecting you to have the same caliber of work, and I only say that just because there were more than one person. So this is why I cut a lot of pages that were initially on this plans book, so you can collectively do this yourselves and not have to worry about 3 or 4 other people working on it at the same time. So I want to make sure that it is comprehensive as well as doable within a month. And again, this should be pretty doable in terms of putting everything together in terms of GURPS and so forth. Use your media flight plan. Use your Excel spreadsheets. When you're searching for a media vehicle, you might say, okay, I want to use Facebook. Look up those prices that you would utilize in this case. If you are looking through traditional media, think about a magazine you might want to put this in, and email me so I can kind of give you some prices, or look on their media guides. Most times than not, if you look at, let's say, a Cosmopolitan magazine, I know that's a very expensive one, and a lot of you aren't doing something like that. One of the easiest ways to look at it is go on their media guide. So just type in Cosmopolitan Media Guide, and typically they'll have some of their figures in terms of what they expect in terms of impressions, in terms of costs, that kind of thing. And then again, if you're doing something local, you want to work in terms of social media, this is the kind of thing that look through boosted posts, how much those cost, look through different local advertisers, and then maybe an opportunity for you to look up their rates and do some research there. So I'm not going to say that this is going to be an easy project. There's a lot to do still, but at the same time, I wanted to be able to deliver this in such a way that would be manageable within the month that we have to work on it. So if you have any questions about the overall campaign, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will be making another video on Thursday. So have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.